So one of the first things I do when I start a grind, so I'm moved over to the other side here, is I'll take a small relief cut along the entire edge, not too deep, but what I want that to do is get that sharp edge out of the way, so when I come in here to establish my flat and work out, I don't have that sharp corner wanting to pull the knife down. It just makes the process easier. So now I'm going to pick up my my little wooden finger here, and I'm going to get this flat established back here, and then using that as a foundation, creep it out and creep it out and creep it out until we keep that flat all the way to the end of the blade. So what I've been doing, getting my flat established, and it's a little bit of a struggle at first. You want to get it established back here, and you're watching your layout line, and I'm still well away from that, and then you watch how you're creeping up the profile of the blade. That's when you start adjusting your angle. So once you get a flat established that you feel like is going to get you to the finish line here and up here just about the same time, you stick with that and you pull your elbows into your body, and it's not so much arm motion, it is just kind of swaying your body back and forth. So once you get your flat established, you start coming this way and you start bringing that flat into the rest of the steel. When you get out here, you'll start feeling a rocking because you're still on steel that hasn't been formed yet. So you drop back, lessen your pressure, and then increase your pressure as you get into new steel, and that just is going to spread your flat forward until finally you'll get to where you don't feel that rocking sensation anymore, and you've got your flat out all the way to the end. So it's the most critical part of grinding these things, is getting that flat established early and sticking with it, and then just watching and using your judgment to make sure that you are creeping up your blade and into your blade at about the same rate. And that's just doing it will teach you that, just experience. And the reason I'm using this is because I would have had to have dunked this blade every 2 or 3 passes, and I just don't like it to break my rhythm, so I do use that now. I'll get rid of this and start using my hands when I get into the finer grits with lighter passes. We're just hogging the steel off right now. Okay, I'm still with this pretty aggressive belt. I've switched to hand holding it and quenching it because I'm just about the point where I'm getting ready to step up in grit. But this is where you want everything even out before you go to a finer grit that's harder to get stuff evened out with. When we step up in grits, all we're doing is removing the scratches from this heavier grit. So at the end of the stroke, you see me do this and get the knife almost vertical. And what I'm doing is I want the taper to the point to start back here and then really start getting into a fine cutting edge. And it's at this point that I'm really watching that center scribe. And I don't know if you can see it, but I can. And I want to keep, that in the center of the knife. So I will just grind accordingly. And as I said, getting ready to step up in grit. So this is still hogged out and rough, but it's getting there. moved up to this silicon carbide 80, and it takes a finer cut. I don't really understand how a ceramic 80 and a silicon carbide can be so much different, but they are. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the rough hogging scratches out of the knife now, and watching my center scribe. Now the bluing has all worn off, but I scribed a deep line, and I can see it in the shop light. I don't know if you guys can, but the main thing is I want that line to remain center and go right to the end of the knife in the center, and so far I've been able to do that. And I just watch it, and if I have to work on one side, I'll flip it over. And I'm watching my layout lines, which are still have some steel on the outside edges of them, and that's good. But I'm almost to the point now where I can get rid of this grinding guard, and I'm not concentrating too much up in this corner yet, trying to get that to the outside or even evened up. Because when I grind my flats, which are under this guide right now, that's going to get taken out, and that curved line that you see is going to get obliterated, and there's going to be a flat formed that we just take back to the, when we get that formed and we get our flats up to just about where they need to be, we go back to the belt and we reestablish all of this geometry. So it's just step by step, but we're getting there. And the knife, well, I've got this heavy guard on there now, but I can tell the knife has lost a lot of weight, and it's getting a nice taper down to that cutting edge. So I like getting it to this point on all of them. It's just following what you've already done at that point, and you have to keep your touch kind of light. So what I'm doing on the grinder is I'm supporting it with my fingers, and I'm looking, and if there's an area either down here or up here that I need to concentrate on, that's what this hand is for. I will either raise my thumb and apply pressure on the upside and kind of favor that, not letting it go like that, but just keeping the pressure there, and just doing that between going here and then maybe taking your pressure down. You get everything evened out and you stay with your layout. It's just don't be in a hurry, and just, well, in any shop, just about the only thing that happens quickly are mistakes, and the only thing you're going to create fast in a knife maker shop is scrap metal. So patience. This work is all about patience, and you get good results, and which encourages you to stay patient. You know, it's a system that works. Okay, so I've taken that guide off, and I'm just starting to work my flats, which up till now had only been ground off with that coarse 80. So I'm just starting to get them up to where they're going to be when the knife is finished. So you can kind of see what I mean. I don't know if it's showing, but as we grind this flat, well, it's naturally going to creep over into this area and take some of this curve out. So we stop on the blade until we get our flats finished, and then we'll redress the blade either before or after we taper the tang. Really doesn't matter. But that is more of what I consider to be a finishing step. Now, one thing I have to address is where that guard was. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a pretty sharp ridge right here and a fairly sharp corner. So now what I do, and I won't do it with this 80 grit belt, but when I move up to the 180 or the 220, I drift the belt to where it creeps off the edge of the platen. And then I just slowly approach that line, and I let the curvature of that little belt, I just let it kind of ride up and round that out, nice and soft, to where it just kind of blends into nothing. It's an important thing because that's a very sharp riser. For one, you wouldn't want to rub your thumb against that or anything while you're using the knife, and it's just going to look better. But yeah, you want a radius on every sharp corner on a knife, so that will form that into a nice soft radius, and it won't even be noticeable. But yeah, it's lost a lot of weight. It's starting to feel like something you could use in a kitchen and not exhaust yourself. And I can only think that when the tang's tapered, it'll be even more so. And we're not even close yet to finished dimension on this. I mean, I've got plenty of layout line. Remember, this face right here, this edge is going down to 30 thousandths before we heat treat. So there's a lot of meat still left on that knife, but we're getting it. One little step at a time, folks. Don't know how noisy that grinder is. Alright, so at this point, while I'm with this 220, just take a Sharpie and I color the entire blade and just take a couple of light passes, and I'm using a very light touch, but it is showing me areas of high and low, and I want to get this blade to the point where this Sharpie comes off just on one pass. So it doesn't take a lot, and the difference between the highs and the lows is, I would think it's less than a couple of tenths of a thousandth. It's a pretty flat blade now, but you want to try to get as much of this out as you possibly can prior to heat treatment. You need symmetry when you heat treat, or you're going to get warpage. So I'm going to keep going back to this until I can color with a Sharpie and just about get everything off on one good pass. Okay, I have it up to a 220 overall, and I went ahead and tapered the tang, and all I did is I cut the pattern, the paper pattern, to the point where this is going to represent the handle, put it on there, and just made a line at the top of the handle piece, and then tapered from there back. So I'm going to draw file this now, and I'm almost to my layout lines here, and I'm going to get there with the draw file and just get those nice and flattened out and evened up. I won't show that because it's just draw filing, but it's shaping up really nicely. And I'm looking to have this one ready to go into heat treatment this evening, and if I can get done with that, there's a little bit longer wait. When you draw this steel, it takes 2 draws at 2 hours each at 400 degrees, so I might not be able to get handles glued on it tonight, but if I don't, I will get them on there first thing tomorrow, and we'll be getting this knife finished. Okay, I have been hand sanding this now. This is a 600 grit finish, and what I do is I look down the blade just about what your view is right now, and I'm looking for rolls and things like that, which is pretty easy to develop in a long blade that's so much longer than your platen is wide. If I'm doing my smaller knives where they're generally 4 inches or less, that's not so much a factor. It holds you all straight, but it is easy to get dips and all. But I think I've gotten them all out, and I'm going to take this up to a 1000 grit hand finish, and then we're going into the furnace to heat treat this. And this knife should finish up fairly quickly, but it has lost a lot of weight, and I like the feel of it now. It's still substantial, but it certainly is nowhere near as heavy as when I started grinding. So the tang has a nice taper to it, and the knife feels good, as is without a handle, but it feels like it's going to be nice in the kitchen. It still has some nice substantial weight for, chopping, and then it has that nice rock on the handle, and it's a nice wide knife. So I'm eager to get this one finished, and we'll come back when we're actually going into the heat treatment part, which will be the next video. But I really wanted to kind of showcase the grind and the process I use when I grind these, because of some questions that were asked me about grinding. So I hope this explains it. It's just the way I do it, but my teaching has been through trial and error over a lot of years, and I get the results I want. So we'll come back in the next video when we're going to be heat treating and finishing this knife.